Hello, founders. Welcome to Startups.com. We are live coming every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. As always, on Tuesdays, we do pitch decks. Hooray! Woohoo! Pitch deck reviews. Hey, everyone out there, if you want your pitch deck reviewed, send it to us. Upload it, attach it to an email to advisor@startups.com, and just hit send. We are going to do the review. I have with me CEO, founder of Startups.com. Will, we've got a pitch competition going on. You're part of the committee as we do a selection process. You can receive $5,000 advisory and investor relations package. And we're judging everything based on idea, deck, team, traction, and all you have to do is notify us to apply. And this is the lens that we're looking at all our pitch decks through, because we've got an extensive database, Will, of investors. We are developing that all the time, and we want to help founders get set up to reach out to those investors. What are your thoughts on what we're working on? Give us a little bit of a taste of what's going to be happening.
Yeah, I think the $5,000 is just, our amount that we help subsidize to give you advisory and get your deck ready. But the real value is what you're going to raise, right? And who you're going to raise it from. So I think the value in what we're doing is saying not only, hey, yes, we can help get your deck ready. We can also prep your pitch, but it's also saying, hey, you're about to raise the most important money that you'll ever raise, right?
Yes.
Especially in the formative stages. Let us help you find the right people to talk to, right? That's the big thing. Like most people that come to us said, and they say, I don't know who to talk to. I don't know any investors. Why would I? And I said, okay, that makes sense. But there's a lot of investors out there. And if we're being honest, most of them are kind of shitty. And I think the value here is more showing you how to not talk to those people, not talk to the wrong people. And again, this is no disrespect to the investors themselves. I know that they mean well, but they're not all created equal, Ed, as you certainly know. And some of them can do more harm than good. So part of what we like to do in all of our sessions is help people understand, what makes a good investor? What should I be looking for? What are some signals that I should be concerned about? And can you let me know when the investor comes to me and says, I want to give you $50,000 and I want 50% of the company?
Right.
We're here to tell you that's bullshit. It's a Shark Tank. And so, our job is to explain to you how these things are actually supposed to work in your favor, on your side of the table, and walk you through it. So again, the dollar amount is great, but the value of what we're trying to do is much greater.
I was about to say, when you offered that deal, I was like, did you go to the Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful School of Investing? Because that's what it sounded like. But hey, everyone out there, if you're watching this on YouTube, do the YouTube thing, like, comment, subscribe. It's always helpful.
Please do.
For those of you joining us in the live studio audience, I'd like to say, use the Q&A box or chat to ask questions. We want you to make this interactive. Ask questions regarding your own pitch decks. Hey, founders, I see you in the audience, and I know your pitch decks, and I know you could benefit from some questions. So make sure that happens. And Will, today we're going to be looking at a SaaS play. So we got this going on here, and a founder we've been working with, and their company is called Exhibitor AI.
I've seen this deck before because obviously we work with some of these founders. What I liked about this is this felt like a very real problem. And,
Yes.
I'm sure you've done the exhibition circuit, et cetera, whether as an exhibitor or an attendee.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of a crapshoot for both sides, right? Just you're mashing all these people together and everybody's trying to do something else. And I always remember the thing whenever I walked up to the exhibitor's booth, the first thing they do is stare at my name tag to figure out if I'm worth talking to. It's so blatant. And I remember every time I come out of those things, I'm like, what a messy way to do business.
Will, you just demonstrated something that's really relevant and important when talking to investors. Sometimes investors are going to have direct relationship with the problem that you're solving.
Absolutely.
Other times they have no clue. You've got all the insider information. It's important to understand where the investors come from. But Will, I can also corroborate what you're saying is exhibitions or trade shows are kind of that necessary evil where you need to go to them, but you don't know if the ROI is there and it's even worth it. It's a pain.
I used to do exhibitions all the time. Like, Ed, you and I came up around the same time in the 90s, and exhibitions were a big deal. I mean, they were a really big deal. Super high tickets, super high profile. It was, and there was so much spectacle to it. And I've been to so many different conventions, Ed, because I've lived so many different lives. Okay. To give you a sense for it, right? I've been to everything from Comic-Con to E3 being the video games exhibition in Los Angeles. I've been to the bar and nightclub exhibition in Las Vegas, which, by the way, every single exhibitor is giving away free booze. It's very difficult to make it through that exhibition hall. And again, when I was in the automotive business, I was at the New York Auto Show at the Javits Center in New York. I mean, like, I've been to so many of these. And I gotta say, they all seem like a giant waste of time.
Yeah.
A giant waste. And I always felt bad for the exhibitors. Always felt bad for the exhibitors because I knew they put so much money into trying to get ROI out of this. And so that's why this problem, this product and everything else resonated with me, Ed, because I'm like, this is real. It's real from both sides.
Okay, so founder, you're going to be getting a taste of, let's say, an investor reaction of someone who relates to the problem. And I'll try and balance it out, even though I can relate to the problem as well, and say, hey, let's think about the investors that might not know anything about this. But this is pretty ubiquitous in terms of trade shows and everything. But here we got, and now credit to this founder. This founder's really been trying to put a lot of what we're doing in practice. And so this is a deck in progress. And this is typically what you're going to get when you're working with us. I wanted to provide this feedback. It says Exhibitor AI, a team of exhibitors powered by AI. And then it says helping exhibitors use AI to expedite the sales process, save costs, and deliver more ROI from conferences, trade shows, and exhibitions. What's your reaction to the cover page?
And what does a team of exhibitors mean?
I don't know.
Yeah, that's really confusing to me. Description is great. It's spot on. Here's what Ed, I think I want to modify some of our advice. I think as we give lots of this pitch deck advice, we sort of codify, things that we feel strongly about consistently.
Yeah, sure.
I've yet to see a tagline on an opening slide. I wouldn't have thought of it until today. But this has got to be the 10th time we've reviewed a deck that has had a tagline on it, and it's so out of place on this title slide. What do you think?
Well, I like to say avoid taglines unless they're like purpose statements that include what you do. And
which
basically
feels like less like a tagline. Yeah.
Right. But it falls well into that category. We always talk about these elements in the pitch deck where it's great if you can pull it off and it works, but most of the time it doesn't work. So things like taglines, putting your story in there, why now slides, etc. I think this falls in the category of use with extreme caution and just accept the fact that it's probably going to fall flat.
Also, again, we should be more intentional on this slide. Again, and a lot of people are like, hey, it's just a title slide. It's just whatever. No, it's the one slide everyone's going to see. And frankly, if you get it right, it just makes everyone's job so much easier. So really, the name of the company and specifically what you do. No flowery terms, no Nike, just do it. Just this is exactly what we do. I think goes a long way in as few words as possible.
And no hyperbolic statements. We're revolutionizing, changing the way that people interface with their information, blah, 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 all that stuff. But, Will, I'm going to take a page out of your book. You rub off on me a lot in terms of looking for those repeat words that cause that friction in the mind, right? So I got Exhibitors AI or whatever that is. Okay, we can just take this out. Exhibitor AI, that's the name of the company. That's great. You could literally take this out. Right? Because how many times have you said exhibitor and AI, right? And so if you could even chop this down a little bit, it's pretty good. But if that's all you had on this slide, I think it'd be a pretty good cover.
And I think if you zoomed out a bit, Ed, the core of all of this is focus. Every slide, the entire deck has to have focus. What we're looking for is anything that doesn't drive one specific narrative, one specific message, one specific outcome is fluff. And really, most of what we see in decks, Ed, is fluff.
Yeah.
It's well-intentioned fluff, but it's fluff.
Right. And unfortunately, founders get in their head, and well, I'm going to take a moment just to vent a little bit. We try and give the best advice possible, and we say, all right, for a screener introduction deck, you want to max 12 slides. I say 10 slides, not including cover, and back contact information.
Yep.
But then founders go, oh, wait, I need to put more in, and they start ballooning their decks. Well, I'm wrestling with a founder right now. I believe I initially offered, and I said, here's your 10-slide deck, and we're going to add cover and back. Will, it's now 31 slides, and I have not been able to get any movement in terms of getting them to see the other perspective. But Will, let's just say that you have a founder out there who's really tempted to put in extra slides. Give it to us straight. Tell us exactly what the investor is going to experience with that.
No one in the history of history has ever been through a slide deck or a meeting saying, I wish this was longer. No one has ever said that. No one has ever been like, this is only 10 slides. I really wish there were 30. What happens is, and this is for every founder, and Ed, if you need to record this part of my segment and play it back for this founder, I say this out to you and the founder out of total respect. No one cares.
Right.
The assumption, which is very selfish, and we all do it, is we believe because we have something that's important to us to say that someone else also wants to hear all of it, right? That is the selfish nature of that communication. An unselfish nature is your time, investor person, has a tremendous amount of value. So it's incumbent on me to say the least I need to say for you to get the point. If it takes me 30 slides to get to my point, no one is interested in what I had to say because no one has that much time and attention.
Right. On top of it takes me 3 minutes to read every single little graphic, every single little reference on your slide. That's not going to cut it either. But thankfully, Will, this one is a nice clean deck. so far, like I said, this founder's really working hard to put these practices into effect as far as the pitch deck. Here's a problem statement. And I'm just going to point out right away, just to get it out of the way so we don't have to point it out. Everyone, when you're looking at pitch decks, the biggest text shouldn't be the problem. Okay. Put it small, top left. Okay. I'm just going to blanket that because I saw this as a regular theme. But let's look at this headline, stark headline right at the top. At 18,000 B2B trade shows, exhibitors face a manual and tedious lead process, delaying follow-up, costing 50% of sales opportunities. And there's a 3 to 6 week lead process, and lost revenue each day is 10K to 25K spent. It's got some numbers in there. What do you think?
I think it's the wrong message with the right packaging. The right packaging, meaning it was said in the right way. I don't think it's capturing the actual pain of the problem. Okay.
Right.
Number one, it doesn't matter that there's 18,000 B2B trade shows or 8,000 or 80,000. The actual number of trade shows does not matter. In this case, it's not useful. Now, let me explain. What matters is at any B2B trade show, the average exhibitor is going to lose $25,000.
This number here.
Exactly. And I would blow that up to be whatever the grand total is. For example, I'm just making this up. B2B exhibitors, trade show exhibitors, lose $1.3 billion per year trying to follow up with leads from their exhibitions because the process is manual and tedious, something.
Sold. Done.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. I need to know how much money is lost, not that there are a lot of trade shows.
Right.
So what we did is, kind of like burying the lead. The important part of this has been left out. Now, there's a couple things that I get anxious about. Let me expand on this a little bit. They face a manual and tedious lead process. Ed, why in your mind is it manual and tedious?
Just because of the way that it's done, probably. It's literally manual, like you took a note on, or you have a business card. This typical thing. Here, give me your business card. It goes into a jar, and then you try to follow up with that after. So I would say that's the expression of manual that comes to my mind.
But you're guessing, right?
I'm guessing. I am.
Wouldn't it stand to reason that if I wanted to tell you what this problem was, that I would tell you exactly what the problem is and not let you or leave you guessing?
Right.
Said differently, how could I tell you that this is a problem if I haven't told you what the actual problem is?
Right. You're demonstrating for investors who don't have that inside information, aren't in your head, can read your mind, or you're not having the voiceover over their shoulder. We're missing an opportunity.
If I were to use some helper text, like some bullet points or kind of an infographic, kind of like they're doing here, I might put something like transcribing business cards, or like maybe the top 3 things that are so manual. Because here's where it gets a little bit wonky, and I know we're going to get into this. What I'm not quite sure is the problem capturing all of the information? Said differently, if I already had it all digitally, would there still be a problem?
Right.
Is it how I'm responding to it vis-a-vis a CRM or some sort of automated messaging, et cetera? I don't think we've done a good job when we set up this problem of triangulating what the actual problem within this is.
Right. I think we're getting to it, we're alluding to it, but it's lost in the main thrust. For example, now that I read this bullet point here, organizing lead lists might be what they're referring to. Again, I'm just total conjecture at this point in time, following with leads manually.
Right. And so that's what I'm saying. Like, I've got to imagine for the trade show organizers, getting leads in front of their exhibitors who spend all this money is also a very important thing for them. Obviously, not everybody is ramped up at the same pace. I know that one of our folks in the audience is, hey, I just went to Cvent's world's largest event management software suite, national conference, fully automated lead flow, no TDM, not manual, direct integration into CRMs. Meaning, yes, this problem does exist among exhibitors. I've seen it, I felt it, but I think I want to be more specific about where the problem exists and where it's persisting. We're living in a digital world. Ed, let me say this. Last week, I was meeting with a vendor, and the vendor gave me their business card. And I'm not even kidding, Ed. The look on my face, I'm like, what the hell do I do with this? I was so confused. The business card it used to be such a rite of passage. I was so goddamn proud to give out my business card. I'm like, look at that stock, right?
Yeah.
And now I was like, are you not on the internet? Like, what? What's the purpose of this thing? So I just thought that was interesting. In a world where that would have been a problem in the past, I wonder what that looks like now.
I'm glad you brought up the comment, and this founder actually is working in the same industry, I believe, if I recall correctly. And we're seeing that there is digital, fully automated lead, everything like that. But here's the interesting thing. And by the way, everyone, investors are never going to sit around and pontificate about your pitch deck. We're doing this because we want our founders to win, especially we get to review their pitch decks. So we're doing this as a thought leadership exercise. But Will, what do you think about showcasing the problem? Because I think this is really interesting right here, is that if you've got these automated tools already out there, as we saw by the comment from chat, but leads are considered dead after a week, So maybe the issue is that they're not following up in the correct amount of time. It's not a matter of organization or whether it's digital. It's just literally you don't follow up within the week, and therefore it's dead, and that's why you're losing all the business. Just a thought.
To your point, Ed, 99% of what we just said would never get repeated amongst an investor because they would have read this, gotten confused, and either left the deck altogether, which a lot of people don't realize, or moved on with the deck, not sure what would happen. The problem, when done right, is so obvious, so specific, so targeted that even if you don't agree with what's going to come next, you absolutely understand the scope of the issue.
Yes, perfect. I love the way you say that. Let's move on to the solution here. The
Cool.
solutions. Exhibitors.ai is building the first AI speed to lead platform for exhibitors, automating the entire follow-up process to engage all prospects, their peak interest, scaling immediate revenue, and eliminating weeks of manual processes.
So I have no idea what they do. Let me say that differently. There's two versions when we explain a solution. There is what you do, meaning like what the outcome of what you do is, and there's how you do it.
Right.
Now sometimes we'll explain what we do, and then the details of how it works will be on a how it works slide. However, whenever we say this is what we do, but the audience still doesn't actually know what you do, that's a problem. Let me unpack that.
Okay.
Automating the entire follow-up process. I don't know what the follow-up process is, so when you tell me you're automating it, that doesn't mean anything to me, okay? Pause there. To engage all prospects at their peak interest. I think I can, wrap my head around that. I think that's well said. Scaling immediate revenue and eliminating weeks of manual processes. So here's what I would say. When you're automating the follow-up process, what does that actually mean? What are you actually doing? Are you sending emails? Are you a CRM? Because there's a lot of CRMs that exist. So you still haven't told me what you're doing differently than what a CRM would do anyway. We're saying eliminating weeks of manual processes. What does that mean exactly? Again, we didn't establish that at any point. We just keep saying we're eliminating. This is a great example where the founder has an exact idea of what this business is and what it does, but they forgot to tell their audience.
Furthermore, you lost me. This deck lost me right at the first sentence. And let me explain what happens. I've seen so many of these. Right. It's a hyperbolic statement. We're building the first or the only thing that does this. And they're using this jargon language, speed to lead platform. All right, that may sound clever, but just as Will was talking about, I don't know what this is. On top of which, things like scaling immediate revenue. What is that? Like, you've got revenue. Are you saying that you're going to help me sell another product? Because I may have something that takes 12 months sales cycle. It's like a $20 million sale, things of that nature. So making all these promises, getting out there and putting this really fluffy, buzzy thing doesn't help the investor with, okay, yeah, that might work for a customer, but exactly what is this? The investor is going to be lost.
Ed, I'm shocked that you didn't react to the infographic in the middle. Exhibitor plus AI equals profit. Now, again, this is all in good fun. You got to understand, Ed and I see thousands of pitch decks. And so for the founders who just see their own generally, I want you to appreciate what I'm about to say. If Ed and I right now had $1, any pitch deck that comes across our desk that basically says my business plus AI equals more money, we'd be in a different business. It's crypto all over again. We've reached peak bubble. And this is me just poking fun because this stuff's fun to talk about. When we talk about AI, we have to remember that AI is now a benchmark. It's a baseline.
Right.
Everyone has AI. So saying we're applying AI doesn't really buy you as much anymore, as much as how are we applying it, like, et cetera.
Totally. Yeah. Well, I had a founder, we were doing their investor relations, targeting investors. And they said, hey, can you target investors that are investing in AI? And I said,
technically,
the
yes.
world is your oyster. Like, pretty much every investor now has to think, okay, how is AI impacting this? It's the same way, like back in the day. Now I'm totally dating us, Will. But back in the day, if there was a time when founders, when we were pitching, not everybody mentioned the internet. Literally, it was like, there's no web component to this or what have you. And then there came that phase where everything had to incorporate websites. But that just goes to show that certain things that become novel then become just the table stakes. And founders have to pay attention to this, because if you keep parroting the wrong language, an investor's going to think you're pretty much out to lunch, like you're not understanding what's happening in the market right now.
And it's also a timing thing. Like, if you were to say we're applying AI 18 months ago, that might have been raised some eyebrows.
Sure.
So, and again, there's no reason most founders would know this. We do this all day long. We see tons and tons of decks, so we can see what the trends are, but it's also our job to communicate that to you. So,
yes.
So you know what you should be saying differently. For many founders right now, they're getting into AI. They're discovering AI. They're walking into this world, and they hear that investors are investing in AI. So they want to talk about AI. And that's okay. What we can't do, and I want to make sure we kind of timestamp this being roughly June of 2025. As of June of 2025, you can't just say we do X with AI. That is dated as hell at this point. Assume that everyone's going to do X with AI. What are you doing differently?
For the sake of this exercise, then, Will, let's brainstorm some ways that this solution statement could be improved, knowing that we weren't exactly sure what the problem they were focusing on, but let's point this founder in the right direction.
We still haven't mentioned what any of these manual processes are.
Right.
Not a single one. And so saying that we're eliminating and automating, et cetera, doesn't give me any context because I can't see it. Now, we might get to it and how it works, I'm hoping, but we're not there yet. What we want to talk about here is we need to have set up the problem better. We need to be able to say, here are the things that are wildly manual, and here is what it takes to increase speed to lead, let's call it. It rhymes, so it must be true. So here's what we need to do.
Oh, man, sorry, dude.
You've never heard that?
No.
Oh, it's classic. The first time I heard that was in a movie, Starsky and Hutch, Ben Stiller. And some guy's like, happy wife, happy life. And he looks at him and he goes, well, it rhymes, so it must be true.
Oh, well played, man. You're in rare form today. That was hilarious.
Yeah. So anyway, and also just, again, I want to pause. The founder whose deck we're digging into, and I'm making jokes and stuff. We love that you're here. We love that you let us present this deck. If you hear us we're not making fun of you. We're making fun of this process because we deal with this all day long, and we're hoping you laugh along. I know hard to do, but we're hoping you laugh along a little bit too, because we got to give a little bit of lightheartedness.
Right. It takes so much courage, and yes, you'd rather have a little chuckle with us at your deck's expense in an attempt to improve it than to not be laughing when an investor basically poo-poos it. But let me take a stab at something here. Just as an exercise, imagine the problem was, exhibitors businesses at exhibitions lose $1.5 billion a year because they lose half their leads because they can't follow up within a week, at which point the lead gets cold because it's all done manually. All right. After the fact, our solution, I'm totally spitballing, our AI immediately tracks that lead, follows up in the same week without in a total automated fashion, researches them and contacts them, so that lead immediately becomes a warm lead. Something like that.
Something tells me, Ed, that the issue is that the ingestion process of getting leads during the event into a system that reaches out to people and starts the email conversation or whatever it is tedious.
Right.
We just haven't done a good job of explaining why that's tedious. And part of where I'm skeptical of that being tedious is actually just what one of our commenters said a moment ago, which is we're in a digital world.
Right.
Again, if this was, hey, I've got to enter and scan all these business cards, et cetera, then I'm like, okay, well, how much of that world still exists? And by the way, if it does, if you were like, look, I get that it sounds like everybody's on LinkedIn, but honestly, here's a stat that says 68% of all leads that come in through trade shows are done through a business card.
Here's the other thing, Will, and everybody has to get ready for investors' personal experience in this. This is where I am going to insert myself into, hey, I already got understanding. When we were at trade shows, well, one of the things that we did immediately, when I met someone that I like, we were able to scan and we immediately changed messages, exchanged LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And
right.
we actually, had a call to action right there on the spot. And we made sure as exhibitors, there was an action to do. So either someone's going to win a prize, there were reasons to follow up. And then we would say, hey, you didn't win the prize, but you won 50% off the next thing, free consultation. So, Will, I'm going to put myself in a situation where we kind of had trade shows on lock. It was just the types of people that are coming to trade shows that weren't worth it for us. But we had a very good system. And so this founder, you're going to experience resistance where there might be some investors out there saying, I don't have this problem, or I don't think this problem actually exists. And that's why the onus is on you, to really explain it properly.
And in a lot of the decks that we see, there is a strong assumption that the audience agrees that this is a problem.
Exactly. Yep.
And that is a dangerous first step to take, because if Ed and I were just to go through this deck and not have all of this back channeling about how we felt about each slide, you would watch us lose interest and credibility in the deck within 30 seconds.
Right.
And for a lot of founders, it doesn't even occur to them that what they're saying may have an air of not being credible. I've gone through this myself with decks where I've presented something. These are my own concepts. And I go to the next slide and the investor's like, yeah, I don't believe any of that's true. And I'm like, there's and I've given this reference before. I did a business that allowed people to buy stuff with weekly payments. That's like a firm now. And the investor, before I got past the first slide, was like, yeah, there's nobody that can't afford to buy something for $400. And I'm like, are you serious?
Yeah.
Like, do you know how the whole world works by any chance? They did not, as it would happen. But I made the assumption that anyone would understand that $400 at the time was a lot of money to people. And it was a huge broken assumption. I missed hard.
Well, let's unpack that just for a moment because I
Yeah.
watched a live pitch, real smart founder, a VC in front of him, literally 3 feet away from that founder. I don't understand how this is applicable. Tell me exactly what I'm experiencing. And the founder said, with all due respect, you're not our demographic. Shut down the conversation, right? and the other investor jumped in and said, that was a rude statement. I'm going to ask the same question, again, and it became confrontational. And again, I'm bringing this up because you don't, as a founder, want to write off that VC that may not agree with you because you've shared this story where then you have appealed to the VC and explained it to them, given them a novel insight, and they've actually turned around and did a 180 and said, now we're interested in talking.
100%. I always looked at it, again, I wasn't like incredulous, like, how dare you not accept my premise? I was surprised. Again, most of the investors I was talking to were Sand Hill Road, Silicon Valley VCs that had never had a job with a name tag and all had Amex black cards, right? They didn't understand that there was such thing as people that made less than $100,000 a year. Like, it was
right.
They were in their own bubble, but that's who I needed to appeal to. I needed to explain to them that this world exists, and by the way, it's like 98% of the world.
100%. So, founder, make sure you put that in there.
Yeah.
And talk about it. And again, we're tremendously courageous of you. We're trying to help you improve. Let's get to the TAM slide.
Yeah.
There are 18,000 B2B trade shows globally occurring every year and 13,000 in the US. The average of 50 exhibitors per event, all in need of immediate ROI amid rising travel event costs, highly competitive landscape, and lack of time for manual process, representing a $675 million opportunity. TAM, SAM, SOM, some explanations. You show the math below there. I'm going to give kudos to that. And they got some references at the bottom.
Okay, Ed.
I know what you're going to do. Okay, let's do the audience. Everyone here.
Let me do it.
Okay.
675 million. That's the only thing I remember.
Hey, and so what Will just did is we just did kind of the memory test. Close our eyes. Can we remember anything on the slide? Now, it just so happens that was bolded, so that's an easy mechanism to help people remember.
But think about it, Ed. That's why I remembered it.
Yes. And it's demonstrating that if you've got this much, like this was such a compound sentence. I had to take a breath reading one sentence that it's counterintuitive or counterproductive to what you want to happen.
This reminded me of like when I was in grade school and there would be a word problem and I would be like words, math, words. It's like my brain couldn't process any of it. Now, again, with all due respect to the founder, I get what you're trying to say. What you've done here, without realizing it, is you've put so much weight on your audience to unpack and synthesize all of this, which you just don't want to do. What you want to be able to say is that there's $675 million being spent currently on trade shows, and that number could increase to something even bigger. Now, ideally, what I would like to see, Ed, if you go back to the slide for a moment, ideally, I always say that I want to see what your insertion point into this market is.
Right.
So that's typically the sum. And so we're saying 75% of US exhibitors at 202,599 per one event. I don't like that. I understand where you got the math. So I get that. What I'm saying is I need to know what slice of the market you're going to start with. And here's what I want you to say. I want you to say that exhibitors are willing to spend over $2.2 billion a year toward increasing ROI on events. So we're going to start with a $100 million market for this type of exhibitor, which is the most voracious in relying on exhibition event type marketing. Let me just 1 second. Let me just build on that.
Sure.
If you could, Ed, tell me if this makes sense to you. Picture a spectrum of types of exhibitors, just people who go to that exhibit at events. On one end of the spectrum are what I'm going to call massive brand exhibitors. This is Toyota at an event. Right? This is NVIDIA at an event. Yes, they're probably there to get leads, so to speak, but like they'll be okay if they don't milk every lead, right? Jensen Huang is going to be okay if he's not making sure he doesn't like get everybody's business card so he can sell them an NVIDIA card.
It's a branding exercise.
Correct. So that's one end of the spectrum, and an important end of the spectrum. But there's another end of the spectrum, Ed, and now I'm thinking Comic-Con, right?
Okay.
Where when I was in the exhibition floor at Comic-Con, there were dudes that spent their life savings, you could tell, on the exhibition booth all the way in the back.
Right.
And if you knew who that guy was too, because if he didn't close every single person that made it back there,
yeah,
he was going to eat tonight. Okay. There is a subsection of this audience, of exhibitor audience, that are dying for this product, they're going to live and die by the quality of this product. Their businesses depend on it because their businesses depend on exhibitions. Show me who that is and say you're going after them first. Because if they won't buy this product, no way in hell NVIDIA is ever buying it.
Okay. Will, you said a lot of good things there. We got to unpack this, and I want to
Yeah,
unpack
sure.
it in a way for the rest of the people watching this understand. First off, okay, this summary headline sentence, good in terms of having one. This just overloaded. Second is, and Will, maybe you've got different comments, but anytime a founder says, and if we reach 1% of the market, we'll all be billionaires, yay, type thing, I roll my eyes. Something inside me, I think a child loses a balloon, like something bad happens inside because I go, how do you know you're going to, do that, etc. And that's why, everyone, what Will said is so much better. You are giving the investor a strategic reason based on an insight, business model, low-lying fruit, some advantage that you have on why you're establishing a beachhead, because all investors want founders to establish that beachhead. It's Facebook starting at Harvard. You could not use Facebook without a Harvard business address, an email address. And everyone said, but my aunt wants it. MIT wants it. Stanford wants it. He said, no, we're going to dominate Harvard. And that literally was on the pitch deck. Well, I don't know if you've ever seen that pitch deck where they raised the money. The first slide said, all the students are so busy on Facebook. They don't have time for anything else. It was, we have crushed it at Harvard, and therefore we can replicate it. And that's what the beachhead is all about.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm saying. If we can't get the most voracious, rabid fans that need this the most, then the rest of the market doesn't matter. And again, when I said, and I just made up names like Toyota or Nvidia, et cetera, as big exhibitors, yes, we would want those someday, but they don't have the same early appetite, the early adopter appetite that some of these smaller folks may have. And by the way, my assessment of this market could be completely wrong. The founder could be like, hey, Will, that sounds great when you say it, but that's actually not how the market works at all. The most voracious groups are actually the Toyotas of the world. They're the ones that have highly specific budget for this, and they've been looking for a solution. I'm just giving you an example. How you apply it would be your assessment of the market, not mine.
Yeah. Well, I'm digressing a bit, but I used to be a comic book artist, and we did trade shows, and comic books were not cool. Okay. And Comic-Con was a community hall with those Walmart fold-out tables.
Yeah.
And like the stores would bring all their backlog issues.
Yep.
And us artists, we'd bring our black and white comics, and we'd sit there and we'd promise if you bought one of our comics, we'd draw you like your own Spider-Man type thing.
Yeah.
We were so not cool. There were no girls dressed up in anime like power costumes, showing off cleavage and asking you to sign their stuff and everything.
Right.
It was not cool. But Will, what you said, I bring this up because what you said makes so much sense to me in terms of the users, that central part that would be, oh my God, thank you, bless your heart for solving this problem. We're experiencing this. I think that's a great beachhead to try and establish.
I would think so. Again, the founder would tell us with far more intel than you and I have who the most ravenous fan is. But what I want to see in your market size slide, I want you to say we're starting with the people that absolutely are dying for this product. And the reason I want you to do that is because what you're really saying is, and Ed, you just alluded to this, if these people don't buy our product, the rest of it doesn't matter. Conversely, though, if these people do buy our product, then it speaks volumes for what the potential is for the rest of the market. But from an investor standpoint, Ed, let's think downside risk. My thought is I'm going to give you, say, $500,000. I want to know that it's being spent in the one place that it absolutely will get eaten up. So if you're saying, look, this is a tiny percentage of the market, but man, these people are crazy about this kind of stuff. Cool. Let's see if it works there. If it doesn't work there, the last thing I want to think about is how to give you more money.
It reminds me, PayPal's beachhead were the power eBay users.
Yep. 100%.
And this was an obscure little group, but they said, man, if we can't make it work with these people, oh yeah, we have no chance. So that's a really great point that you're making.
Hey, Ed, let me give you a funny epilogue story. Guy that I know, his name is Bill Clerico. He started a company called WePay. This is like in the early mid 2000s.
I've used it. Yep.
Okay. And it was a competitor to PayPal. I'm bringing this up because you were talking about how PayPal entered the market. I love the story about how Bill and his team entered the market. Here's what they did, because it actually involves exhibitions. There was some massive conference down at, oh man, what's the Javits Center of San Francisco? I'm blanking on the name. Anyway, there's a massive conference, and it was for like payments providers, et cetera. And PayPal was like one of the title exhibitors. And they wanted to go head to head with PayPal. Because they said there were so many people that were pissed off that PayPal was freezing their money.
Ooh, okay. Makes sense.
You know what they did? They froze a bunch of money.
I remember this.
And they somehow smuggled this giant ice block onto the front of the convention center and had it sit there. Nobody could move it because it was so heavy. And everyone was like messing with it because there was money. And it just said, we pay. We won't freeze your money like PayPal does. And so, but I say this, it's a funny story. But the reason I bring this up is because their entry point was there's a lot of people that are pissed off at PayPal for freezing their money. We're going after them first in like the most literal way possible. That's why it worked. WePay did very well.
Yes, it did. I do remember that. It's such a great lesson. Let's talk about and wrap this up in terms of what this founder can take away. Founder, what Will explain in terms of, hey, this is what I want to hear, and you explain the narrative. This is where we're going to start. We're going to grow into it. That's literally what you put. Like, just transcribe what Will said and take the principles and apply it to what works for you. Just for the sake of posterity, founder, if you are using TAM, SAM, SUM, that's the model you want to use. And I don't have any issue with it. There are multiple ways to do this. Your TAM is everybody that could use it times what you're going to make. Fine, great. Your SAM is the segment based upon that strategic insight, etc. And you did not give any explanation as to why you picked this segment, like Will talked about. They're experiencing the pain. They can't afford the other solutions out there. Just figure out what's going on. They're used to mobile. They're all in Gen Z and etc. Right?
Right.
And then on top of which, your SOM is what you realistically can do. And again, 75% of US exhibitors, that doesn't sound realistic at all. And now you've also changed the parameters at $5.99 for one event. So now I'm confused. I understand what you're trying to do. So go and research what an official TAM, SAM, SOM looks like and apply these principles and put a good headline sentence up here doing Will Schroeder's method, and you're going to get to what you need on this slide. Anything else to add, Will?
Yeah, 18,000 B2B trade shows with an average of 50 exhibitors per event is the wrong number. This is just, I've been a CFO for 25 years for startups, and I tend to notice these things. Ed, wouldn't that assume, so 50 times 18,000, of course, is 900,000. That math holds up. But wouldn't that suggest that every single event has 50 unique exhibitors that aren't already your client? Wouldn't it stand to reason that of those 18,000 B2B trade shows, that some number of those 50s would be at many of those trade shows?
This statement lost me. I glazed over. I didn't even go that deep.
But it's the basis for the math of their TAM. That's why I brought it up.
Gotcha. Okay. Right.
And so if you're saying the TAM is 2.2 billion, again, and your math would be correct of 24.99 times 900,000. So that's correct. Founder and folks listening, what I want to make sure is that the number you're multiplying by, the 900,000, is an actual number. And 50 times 18,000 is 900,000. However, I don't think it's 50 unique exhibitors across 18,000 B2B trade shows. That would shock me. If that is the number, then again, ignore everything I just said. But I'd want to double check that.
Will, you bring up a really good point demonstrating founders, investors will do that level of due diligence. They will literally say, hey, where's all your data come from? Put in your due diligence room. We are going to go through it with a fine-tooth comb because Will, and I say this before, we never really fully believed in the TAM as investors. We appreciate when a founder was thoughtful about their TAM. But literally before we wrote a check, I would say to the founder, send me your data. We're going to crunch our own numbers. That's what happened.
Yeah. And here's what I would also say. I always tell people when I do my workshops and video lessons and things like that, I say, listen, you're overthinking these TAM exercises. TAM just gets you to a ballpark. The only time the investor is going to get really anxious is if something about what you just said just sounds fishy.
Yeah.
You said this, the TAM was 7 billion and I calculated it to be 5 billion. Sort of who cares? Right? It's the same ballpark. But if there looks like a glaring omission in your TAM, where I can easily in 2 seconds say, hold on, something's not right there. And again, I could have been wrong. The founder could have stood up there and say, oh, Will, you got that wrong. It actually is a total of 50 unique exhibitors. And I'd say, okay, it's fine. But in a lot of cases, Ed, we see things like the TAM is $2.8 trillion. If your TAM is anywhere close to the word trillion, you've got the wrong TAM, I guarantee. or somebody says, we've got a new energy drink and our TAM is everybody that consumes liquid. And we're like, oh, cool, you're going to give your Red Bull to babies?
Right.
Oh, well, no, you're going to give it to old people with heart conditions? Oh, well, no. Well, then, dude, like, I debunked that in 5 seconds. All I'm saying is it doesn't have to be perfectly accurate. It just doesn't have to be insane.
Yes. If we can debunk it in 5 seconds, imagine what an investor's going to do during due diligence.
Correct.
And I want to acknowledge the comment that came through the chat. Who is paying the individual exhibitors or overall trade show? And Will, you responded, the exhibitors. But it also illustrates a good point is that there hasn't been a lot of clarity on the problem and solution, so I can understand where the confusion is going to come from.
Yeah.
And so we want to do one more slide here, Will.
Yeah, sure.
And let's do the how it works slide. And just give me your first cut at this. We got big how it works. Again, shrink that. You upload leads and notes, and then there's arrows, and you've got some screenshots. So let's help the founder out in terms of what they should be thinking about for this slide.
Okay. Let's start with how I believe that they're trying to communicate the problem or the process in this case. We upload leads and notes. I don't exactly know what that means. I know what leads and notes are. I don't know what you're thinking, founder, leads and notes are.
Right.
Right. Again, are these free form notes where somebody just, jotted it down on their iPad? Are the leads and notes coming from a specific source, vis-a-vis business cards to, LinkedIn profiles, whatever, email addresses? And when we're talking about how we're coordinating and synthesizing all of this rough data, it would be helpful. And I think we should have done this in the problem to show what these sources are so we could easily reference why they're so hard to wrap our arms around. What do you think, Ed?
I'm going to totally repeat. So I want you to test me, Will, because this is the perfect scenario for your formula on the how it works slide. Okay. So, everyone see how I do. This is what we teach here at Startups.com. If you take our online course, it's literally how it lays it out. Yeah. You start off with the state of the problem, the user with the problem. So user gets a bunch of leads at a trade show and they're all in business card format and they're all disorganized. Then the last step, I'm going to jump ahead, is sort of the fairy tale ending, the aha, I've solved my problem. And then you have it in the middle. So this one could be disorganized leads, and then it gets scanned into a machine, the AI gets to work, contacts them, etc. And then in 1 week, I'm having conversation, get responses from all my leads. Literally that simple.
Let me paraphrase. 3-step process. Step 1 is always the problem. Ed just got back from his conference. He has 1,000 leads, but he has no way to synthesize all that information and reach out to everybody in the current week when everybody's still thinking about buying. Ed uses Exhibitor AI, which automatically parses all the information for him and automatically generates all of his outbound emails in the same day while the interest level is still hot. Step 3. Ed now gets in front of all those customers before everyone else did, who still had to deal with all of those different processes.
That's a nice one. And Will, let me append to that. What you just did, just by articulating better than I did, was make this sound like, man, this is going to sell like hotcakes. This is exactly, people are going to desire this, going to thank you for it. And that, everybody, that's the power of a how it works slide. Instead of step 1, log in, step 2, press enter, step 3, right? You don't have to have that. And I would say, Will, this slide has the foundation for that, because at least I start off in the beginning, at the end, AI takes care of the rest. At least it's giving me some promises to make sure. But the screenshots, not necessary. We didn't explain how AI actually helps it out. So there's a lot that we could do here, but at least we're pointing in the right direction.
There's so many things here that we just didn't give the investor, the audience, the opportunity to learn. If I had a spreadsheet with all that data that they're showing, why can't I just copy all the email address? I already know the answer to why, but why can't I just copy every email address, put it in a BCC, and say to everybody, can we get on the phone tomorrow? There's a reason you can't do that, because every lead has different context, et cetera. But we need to convey that. And we need to say, not only do I have all these leads, but I have substantially different context for all of them that needs to be immediately followed up with that context in a short period of time before all my competitors get to them first.
Will, let me end with this. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Notice how we only got to the how it works slide. And that was even me kind of accelerating. Now we told some fun stories. We had a few giggles along the way. This is what happens when you don't have your upfront slides, problem, solution, market locked in. Like they have to be on lock, because that friction, the investors either already quit or we spend all this time trying to massage it and work it. So we don't get to these end slides. We would if the upfront slides, you can tighten them up and we can zoom through them and say, now let's look at the team. Let's look at the business model. Let's look at traction, everything along those lines. But to this founder, I would say, you've got a lot to work on in terms of going back. We know this is a problem we're solving. We started upfront with it, but establish problem, solution, market, and you pretty much got like 80% of slides, 80% of pitch deck figured out.
This is a real startup with a real problem with the wrong pitch deck. And
very common.
Very common. And this is usually how it starts. Just to be clear, there's nothing that this founder did in this deck that we haven't seen 1,000 times before. And I would partially say this kind of is the process, right? This actually is how these things unfold when you're building your pitch deck. There's almost zero cases where people come to us and says, here's my deck. And I'm like, oh my God, you hit on every point. This is so well communicated perfectly. It happens almost never, which is kind of why we do these and part of what we do among a million other things at Startups.com. Here's what I would say to the founder. What we didn't say, what you didn't hear us say is this isn't a real problem. We never said that. We never said that this isn't a real business that has real value. We said, we know it's a real business that has real value. And you keep forgetting to tell the audience. We know you're trying. This is part of the process, and we're here to help you do that. But if you look at Ed week over week, when we go through all these different decks with all different founders in all different industries, they all have the same problem. They share the same challenges, which is a fundamental challenge of communication.
And this isn't something you wake up one morning and say, I can naturally do pitch decks. Everybody learns a skill, so don't worry. You'll be fine. Just keep at it, be consistent, and improve and iterate. That's what's going to happen. Will, as always, this was a lot of fun. Hey, to all you founders out there, remember, you can send us your pitch deck, let us know, leave a comment, and ask us to have your pitch deck review. We'll respond, give you some instructions. If you found it useful, do us a favor. If you learned something, share that knowledge. Doesn't even have to be
Please.
from us. Take all the credit. We don't care. Share it with another founder,
us.
right? And say, hey, I want to help other founders at large, and that's what we're here to do. And obviously, being together in a community, we appreciate all of you. Will, last words of encouragement from you.
Last words of encouragement would be this. Don't look at the pitch deck as this document that I have to get right away. Like back in the day when we were in college and we had to hand in our term paper to get graded by a professor. This is not that. It's not an assignment that you're getting graded on. It is a process that you work through, like your entire startup's going to be. It's trial and error. Keep trying lots of stuff, just like you did with this deck, but realize that this is iteration 1 of 1,000. Okay. And that's fine. That is the process. What we want you to do is get comfortable, just keep chipping away at it. Don't go back like, oh, I screwed this up. I got a D- and I failed. You didn't fail. This is part of the process. You got started. Our job is to keep you moving. But as you guys are looking at through this, you're looking at your own deck saying, oh my God, I missed so many things. That's fine. Chip away at it 1% at a time. No more.
Will, pleasure as always. I'll see you next week.
Take care, everybody.